At the edge of town lies the entrance to the Whispering Woods, a place shrouded in mystery and whispered tales of the supernatural. The path winds its way into the heart of the forest, disappearing into the dense mist that clings to the trees like a shroud. Deep within the woods, a group of friends has set up camp for the night, seeking adventure in the unknown depths of the forest. A small campfire crackles and hisses, casting flickering shadows that seem to dance in time with the whispers that echo through the trees. In a moonlit clearing, the dense canopy of trees creates an oppressive atmosphere, suffocating the sounds of the night. Moss-covered ground crunches beneath the feet of the campers as they venture deeper into the heart of the woods, a sense of foreboding settling over them like a suffocating blanket. Suddenly, the group stumbles upon an old abandoned cabin nestled among the trees. Its windows are shattered, and the door hangs off its hinges, swinging ominously in the breeze. Moonlight filters through the cracks in the walls, casting eerie shadows that seem to dance and sway with a life of their own. Inside the cabin, the main room is a scene of decay and neglect. Decaying furniture sits shrouded in cobwebs, and dust hangs thick in the air like a tangible presence. The only sound is the creaking of floorboards beneath their feet and the distant whispers that seem to emanate from the very walls themselves. In the bedroom, a tattered mattress lies abandoned amidst peeling wallpaper and crumbling plaster. Moonlight filters weakly through a cracked window, casting eerie shadows that seem to writhe and twist upon the walls like living things. Descending into the basement, the air grows thick with the scent of decay and mold. Rusted chains hang ominously from the ceiling, their purpose long forgotten. The sound of dripping water echoes through the darkness, a constant reminder of the relentless passage of time. In the attic, cobwebs cling like shrouds to forgotten relics of a bygone era. Dusty trunks sit amidst a clutter of long-forgotten possessions, their secrets buried beneath layers of neglect. Moonlight filters through a broken skylight, casting an ethereal glow upon the abandoned treasures that lie hidden in the shadows. Venturing deeper into the heart of the woods, the trees close in around them like silent sentinels, their twisted branches reaching up towards the sky like gnarled fingers. Moonlight struggles to penetrate the thick canopy, casting eerie shadows that seem to dance and sway with a life of their own. As dawn breaks, the first light of morning filters through the trees, casting a golden glow over the clearing. The campfire smolders, its flames reduced to embers, and the forest is bathed in an eerie silence that seems to linger long after the night has passed.
In the outskirts of a small town stands an old, dilapidated house, its windows shattered and its walls covered in ivy. Four friends, Tom, Sarah, Emily, and Alex, decide to explore the abandoned house one evening. As they approach, the moon casts eerie shadows on the broken porch. With trepidation, the friends push open the creaking front door and step into the house's foyer. The air is musty, and dust motes dance in the beams of their flashlights. As they explore further, they feel a sense of unease settle over them, as if the house itself is watching their every move. Inside the house, they encounter rooms filled with decaying furniture and peeling wallpaper. Strange symbols are etched into the walls, and the temperature drops noticeably as they explore deeper. A feeling of dread washes over the group as they realize they are not alone in the house. As they delve further into the house, they begin to hear faint whispers that seem to echo through the halls. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the air with an eerie chorus that sends shivers down their spines. Shadows dance on the walls, twisting and contorting in unnatural ways. Suddenly, a ghostly figure materializes before them, a translucent apparition with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. Its ethereal form hovers in the air, its movements slow and deliberate. Frozen with fear, the friends watch as the ghostly figure drifts closer, its presence filling the house with a chilling cold. With a collective cry, the friends turn and flee from the house, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the dark corridors, their breath ragged and their footsteps echoing off the walls. Behind them, the ghostly figure follows, its unearthly wails echoing through the empty halls. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from the house, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They vow never to speak of their night in the haunted house again, haunted by the shadows that lurk within its walls. but they know that some secrets are best left buried in the darkness.
Ravenswood Manor was infamous in the small town of Crestwood. Emily, a curious historian, decided to explore the mansion for her research on haunted houses. She arrived just as the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the old, decrepit building. The iron gates creaked as she pushed them open, feeling a chill run down her spine. Emily pushed open the heavy wooden door, which groaned loudly. Inside, the mansion was dark and musty. Dust covered the floor, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. She turned on her flashlight, revealing a grand but neglected foyer. Her footsteps echoed ominously as she walked down the main hallway, her breath visible in the cold air. As Emily explored, she noticed the shadows on the walls seemed to move independently of the light. She heard faint whispers like a distant conversation. Her heart raced as she spun around, but the hall was empty. Determined to continue, she pressed on, feeling the unseen eyes watching her every move. A dimly lit dining room with a large old portrait of a stern-looking woman hanging on the wall. The eyes in the painting appear to follow Emily as she moves. Emily stands close to the painting, looking at it with a mix of curiosity and fear. The room feels cold, with visible breath in the air, adding to the chilling atmosphere. A dark, dusty basement with strange symbols painted on the walls and old books scattered on a table. Emily stands in the center, holding a journal and reading it with a look of horror and fascination. The atmosphere is mysterious and filled with an air of dark secrets and ancient curses. As Emily read the journal, the basement grew colder. A ghostly figure of Eliza Ravenswood appeared, her face twisted with rage. She pointed at Emily and screamed, "You should not have come here!" The walls shook, and the air filled with a chilling wind. Emily knew she had to leave immediately. Emily bolted up the stairs, the spirit's screams echoing behind her. She raced through the mansion, the walls seeming to close in on her. She burst through the front door and into the night, gasping for breath. The house stood silent and still, but she could feel the weight of its curse pressing down on her. Back in her apartment, Emily reviewed the photos and notes she had taken. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. She wrote her article, revealing the dark history of Ravenswood Manor. As she finished, she felt a cold draft and heard Eliza's voice whisper, "You cannot escape the curse." She knew the haunting was far from over. An old abandoned cabin stands alone in the heart of a dense forest. The wooden walls are rotting, and the windows are broken, giving the place a forlorn look. Tall, menacing trees surround the cabin, their long shadows stretching as the sun begins to set. Inside the cabin, the living room is a relic of the past, covered in dust and cobwebs. An old moth-eaten sofa sits in the center of the room, facing a fireplace with burnt logs. A single lantern flickers, casting eerie shadows on the walls, hinting at the secrets the cabin holds. The kitchen is in complete disrepair, with broken cabinets and rusted appliances. Moonlight filters through a cracked window, casting a pale glow on an old blood-stained knife lying on the counter. The air is thick with the scent of decay and forgotten memories. A narrow path winds through the dark forest, with twisted tree branches reaching out like skeletal hands. The ground is littered with fallen leaves, and an eerie mist rises from the forest floor, adding to the sense of unease that hangs in the air. In a clearing deep within the forest, the full moon illuminates an ancient stone altar. The altar is covered in moss and vines, and strange symbols are carved into the stone, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The air is thick with an otherworldly presence, making the skin crawl. A dark, fast-flowing river cuts through the forest, its black waters reflecting the moonlight. A rickety wooden bridge spans the river, creaking ominously with each gust of wind. The sound of the rushing water adds to the sense of isolation and dread. The basement of the cabin is dark and damp, with stone walls covered in moss. Rusted chains hang from the ceiling, swaying slightly in the draft. The floor is littered with broken bottles and old bones, remnants of a sinister past. A hidden room in the basement, revealed by a secret door, is filled with ancient books and strange artifacts. A large, dusty mirror dominates the room, reflecting an eerie glow. The air is thick with the scent of old parchment and something darker, more malevolent. As dawn breaks, the edge of the forest is bathed in a soft, golden light. The shadows recede, revealing the cabin in the distance. Birds begin to sing, their cheerful notes bringing a sense of normalcy back to the eerie setting, but the haunting memories of the night linger. In the morning light, the abandoned cabin appears less menacing, but still forlorn. The broken windows and overgrown yard are clearly visible, and a sense of unease still lingers in the air. The events of the night have left their mark, a reminder that some secrets are best left undisturbed. On a stormy night, four friends, Emma, Jake, Sophie, and Liam, arrive at Ravenswood Manor, an abandoned house said to be haunted. The wind howls and lightning illuminates the decaying facade. Jake, the adventurous one, suggests they spend the night there. Despite their fear, they all agree and push open the rusted gate. The front door creaks loudly as they step inside. The foyer is dark and smells of mold. Cobwebs hang from the ceiling, and broken furniture lies scattered around. Their flashlights reveal faded portraits on the walls, eyes seemingly following them. The door slams shut behind them, making them jump. They enter the living room, where a grand piano sits covered in dust. The wallpaper is peeling, and the room is filled with antique furniture draped in white sheets. Emma notices a music box on the mantel. She opens it, and it starts playing a haunting melody. Suddenly, a cold breeze brushes past them, and the room feels alive. A shadow moves across the room, and Sophie screams. They shine their flashlights in the direction of the movement, but see nothing. Jake insists it was just a trick of the light, but the others aren't so sure. They decide to stick together as they continue exploring. In the kitchen, they find rusted appliances and broken dishes. The air is colder here, and the feeling of being watched intensifies. Liam opens a cupboard, and a pair of ghostly eyes stare back at him. He yells and slams the door shut, his heart racing. They find a door leading to the basement. Jake suggests they go down, but Emma hesitates. The others convince her, and they descend the creaky wooden stairs. The basement is pitch dark and damp. Their flashlights reveal old, dusty furniture and strange markings on the walls. In the basement, they find an old table with a Ouija board on it. Suddenly, the planchette moves on its own, spelling out, "Leave now." A low growl echoes through the room, and they see red eyes staring at them from the darkness. Panicked, they rush back up the stairs. They race towards the front door, but it won't budge. Ghostly wails echo through the house, and the walls seem to close in on them. Jake finds a side window and breaks it with a chair. One by one, they crawl through, escaping into the stormy night. The house falls silent behind them. Outside, they collapse onto the wet grass, gasping for breath. The manor looms dark and silent behind them. They vow never to return, each one haunted by the night's events. The storm begins to calm, but the memory of what they saw remains vivid. Back at their homes, they try to return to normal life. But each night, they are haunted by nightmares of the ghostly eyes and the whispers in the dark. The memories of that night stay with them, a reminder that some places are better left undisturbed. On a foggy autumn evening, four friends, Lucy, Tom, Ava, and Ben, stand before Greystone Manor, an abandoned mansion known for its haunted past. Ben, always the thrill-seeker, dares the group to spend the night inside. With a mix of nervousness and excitement, they agree, pushing open the creaky iron gate and stepping onto the overgrown path leading to the mansion. The front door groans loudly as they push it open, revealing a dark, musty foyer. Cobwebs hang from the ceiling, and a thick layer of dust covers everything. The air smells of mold and decay. They switch on their flashlights, casting long shadows on the peeling wallpaper as they step inside, the door slamming shut behind them. They decide to explore and find themselves in a grand library, filled with old leather-bound books. A large, dusty chandelier hangs from the ceiling, and an ancient fireplace sits cold and empty. Lucy notices a book lying open on a table, its pages filled with strange symbols. As she touches it, the chandelier above them begins to sway. A sudden cold breeze blows through the room, extinguishing their flashlights. In the darkness, they hear faint whispers and the soft sound of footsteps. Panic sets in as they fumble to turn their flashlights back on, only to see a shadowy figure disappear into the next room. They follow the figure into the kitchen where old rusted appliances and broken dishes litter the floor. The air is colder here and the feeling of being watched intensifies. Ava opens a cupboard and a pair of ghostly eyes stare back at her. She screams and the cupboard door slams shut on its own. In the hallway, they find a door leading to the basement. Ben suggests going down, but Lucy hesitates. The others convince her, and they slowly descend the creaky wooden stairs. The basement is pitch dark and the air is damp and chilly. They feel an overwhelming sense of dread. In the basement, they find an old wooden table with strange markings. A low growl resonates through the room, and they see glowing red eyes staring at them from the far corner. Panic-stricken, they scramble back up the stairs as the growling grows louder. Desperate to leave, they race towards the front door. The house seems to come alive, with doors slamming and ghostly wails echoing through the halls. They struggle to open the front door, finally bursting out into the cold night air. The mansion falls silent behind them. Outside, they collapse into the grass, gasping for breath. The mansion looms dark and silent behind them. They vow never to return, each one haunted by the night's events. The night air is cold, but they feel a sense of relief and safety. Back at their homes, the friends try to return to normal life. But each night, they are haunted by nightmares of the ghostly eyes and the whispers in the dark. The memories of that night remain vivid, and they realize that some horrors can never be forgotten.
In a remote forest clearing stands an old, dilapidated cabin, its windows boarded up and its door barely hanging on its hinges. 4 friends, Tom, Sarah, Mike, and Emily, arrive at the cabin for a weekend getaway. The sun is setting, casting long shadows over the eerie landscape. Inside the cabin, the air is thick with dust and decay. Cobwebs hang from the rafters, and the floorboards creak ominously underfoot. The friends explore cautiously, their footsteps echoing off the walls as they navigate the dimly lit rooms. As they search the cabin, they discover a trapdoor leading to a dark, musty basement. With trepidation, they descend into the depths below, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The air grows colder, and the sound of dripping water echoes off the stone walls. In the basement, they begin to hear faint whispers that seem to echo off the stone walls. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the air with an eerie chorus. The friends exchange nervous glances, their hearts pounding as they try to locate the source of the haunting sounds. Suddenly, ghostly figures materialize before them. Translucent apparitions with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. The ethereal beings glide through the darkness, their movements graceful yet unsettling. The friends watch in horror as the spirits draw closer, their presence filling the basement with a chilling aura. With adrenaline driving them, the friends turn and flee from the basement, their hearts pounding with terror. They scramble up the stairs, their footsteps echoing off the walls as they race for the safety of the cabin above. Behind them, the ghostly spirits follow, their unearthly wails growing fainter as the friends struggle to escape. Exhausted and trembling, the friends burst through the door of the cabin, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They collapse on the floor, their bodies shaking with adrenaline and fear. Outside, the moon casts an eerie glow over the forest, as if mourning the events that have unfolded.
In the heart of Blackwood Forest, a group of friends, Jack, Sarah, Luke, and Emma, embarks on a dare to explore the Forbidden Woods. As they enter the forest, tall trees cast long shadows, and a sense of foreboding hangs in the air. Pushing deeper into the forest, they follow a winding path that seems to disappear into the shadows. The air grows cooler, and strange noises echo through the trees. Despite their growing unease, they press on, driven by curiosity and adrenaline. Suddenly, they stumble upon a moonlit clearing, the ground littered with decaying leaves and gnarled roots. In the center stands an ancient, dilapidated cabin, its windows shattered and its doors hanging off their hinges. The air is heavy with the stench of decay. With trepidation, they approach the cabin and cautiously step inside. The interior is shrouded in darkness, the only light coming from their flickering flashlights. Cobwebs cling to the walls and the floorboards creak ominously beneath their feet. As they explore further, they begin to hear faint whispers that seem to emanate from the walls themselves. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the cabin with an otherworldly chorus that sends shivers down their spines. Suddenly, a dark shadow materializes before them, its form shifting and twisting in the dim light. It looms over them, its eyes glowing with malevolence as it reaches out with ghostly hands. Frozen with fear, they realize they have awakened something ancient and sinister. With a collective scream, the friends flee from the cabin, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the forest, the shadows closing in around them as they run. Behind them, they can hear the echoing laughter of the darkness that lurks within Blackwood Forest. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from Blackwood Forest, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They vow never to return to the haunted woods, haunted by the shadows that lurk within its depths.
On a dark, stormy night, 5 friends, Alice, Ben, Clara, David, and Eva, walk down a desolate street. They come across an old, dilapidated house at the end of the road. The house is known among locals as the last house on the street and is rumored to be haunted. Despite their fear, curiosity gets the better of them, and they decide to explore the house. The door creaks loudly as they push it open, revealing a dusty, abandoned interior. They enter the living room, which is filled with old furniture and a large, cracked mirror on the wall. Suddenly, the door slams shut behind them, and they hear faint whispering. The whispering leads them to a hidden door behind the stairs, which opens to a dark basement. Hesitant but determined, they descend the creaky steps, the air growing colder with each step. In the basement, they find an old chest. When they open it, they discover ancient cursed artifacts and a diary. The diary tells the story of a family that disappeared mysteriously, and it warns of a malevolent spirit trapped in the house. As they read the diary, the temperature drops, and a chilling presence fills the room. Shadows begin to move on their own, and the friends see a ghostly figure emerging from the darkness. Realizing they need to escape, they run back up the stairs. The house seems to come alive, with doors slamming and windows shattering. They finally break free and run out into the stormy night, vowing never to return. Back in the safety of their homes, they sit together, shaken but relieved. They know they will never forget the night they encountered the haunted house at the end of the street.
On a crisp autumn day, a group of friends arrives at a remote cabin nestled deep within the Whispering Woods. The leaves crunch beneath their feet as they unload their belongings from the car, eager for a weekend of hiking and relaxation. But as they glance into the dense forest surrounding the cabin, a sense of unease washes over them, as if the trees themselves are whispering secrets they dare not share. The friends set out on a hike through the Whispering Woods, following a narrow trail that winds through the dense foliage. The air is cool and fragrant, and the only sound is the gentle rustle of leaves overhead. But as they venture deeper into the forest, the whispers grow louder, like a chorus of voices urging them to turn back. As they hike, the friends stumble upon an abandoned cabin hidden deep in the woods. The windows are shattered, and the door hangs off its hinges. Intrigued, they decide to investigate, their curiosity outweighing their sense of caution. But as they step inside, they're greeted by an eerie silence that hangs heavy in the air. Inside the cabin, the friends find strange symbols scrawled on the walls and mysterious artifacts scattered about. A sense of unease washes over them as they realize they've stumbled upon something dark and sinister. They exchange nervous whispers, their voices echoing in the empty space. As night falls, the friends gather around a campfire outside the cabin, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. But as they talk and laugh, they become aware of a strange sound, a soft whispering that seems to emanate from the very air around them. Their laughter fades, replaced by a growing sense of unease. That night, the friends are plagued by haunting dreams, visions of shadowy figures lurking in the darkness, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent. They toss and turn in their sleep, unable to escape the grip of fear that holds them tight. When they wake, they find themselves drenched in sweat, their hearts pounding in their chests. As the whispers grow louder and more insistent, the friends begin to unravel, their minds tormented by the malevolent voices that seem to follow them wherever they go. They argue and accuse one another, their once strong bonds fraying under the weight of paranoia and fear. But as they spiral further into madness, they realize they must confront the darkness that lurks within the Whispering Woods if they have any hope of escaping its grasp. Armed with determination, the friends set out into the forest, their hearts pounding in their chests as they confront the source of the whispers that have tormented them for so long. With each step, the voices grow louder, until they're surrounded by a cacophony of sound that threatens to drive them mad. But as they reach the heart of the woods, they discover the truth. The whispers are not coming from some malevolent force, but from the very trees themselves, their branches swaying in the breeze like fingers beckoning them closer. With a newfound sense of understanding, the friends make their way out of the forest, their minds clearer than they've been in days. As they emerge into the light of day, they feel a weight lifted from their shoulders, knowing that they've faced their fears and emerged stronger for it. Though the Whispering Woods will always hold a certain mystique, they know they'll never again be haunted by the whispers that once tormented them.
It was a dreary afternoon when Sarah, Tom, and their teenage daughter Lily arrived at Eldridge Manor. The old, sprawling mansion stood ominously against the darkening sky, its windows like blank eyes staring back at them. The family had inherited the property from a distant relative, and despite its eerie appearance, they decided to give it a chance. "Wow, this place is huge!" Lily exclaimed, though her excitement was tempered by an uneasy feeling. Tom forced a smile. "Let's make it our home. It just needs a little work." Sarah glanced at the towering structure, feeling a chill run down her spine. "Let's get inside before it gets too dark." Inside, the manor was filled with antique furniture, dusty chandeliers, and creaking wooden floors. As they explored, they discovered a hidden staircase behind an old bookcase. Curiosity got the better of them, and they descended into a dimly lit basement. "This place is like a maze," Tom said, his voice echoing off the walls. Sarah found an old diary on a dusty table. "Look at this," she said, flipping through the pages. "It's from the 1800s. Lily, shining a flashlight around the room, gasped as she saw strange symbols carved into the walls. "What do these mean?" That night, as they settled into their new home, strange things began to happen. Lily's room was the coldest in the house, and she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Around midnight, she heard whispering voices and saw a shadow moving in the corner of her room. "Mom! Dad!" she screamed, running to their room. Tom and Sarah woke up startled. "What is it, Lily?" Tom asked. "There's something in my room. I heard voices and saw a shadow," Lily said, trembling. Sarah tried to comfort her. "It's just your imagination, honey. This place is old and creepy, but there's nothing to be afraid of." The next day, Sarah delved deeper into the old diary. It belonged to a woman named Eleanor Eldridge, who wrote about the strange occurrences in the manor and her experiments with the occult. She mentioned a mirror in the attic that was the source of the hauntings. "We need to find that mirror," Sarah said, showing the diary to Tom. Tom nodded. "Let's go to the attic." Together, they climbed the narrow staircase to the attic. Amidst the cobwebs and old trunks, they found the mirror, covered with a dusty cloth. "This must be it," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. As they uncovered the mirror, a cold breeze swept through the attic. The mirror's surface was strangely clear, and as they looked into it, they saw faint images of people moving behind them, ghostly figures trapped within the glass. Sarah gasped. "This is it. This is what's causing everything." Tom placed a hand on her shoulder. "We need to destroy it." But before they could act, the mirror began to glow, and the room filled with an unearthly light. The figures in the mirror became more distinct, reaching out towards them. "We need to get out of here," Tom shouted, pulling Sarah towards the stairs. That night, the hauntings intensified. Doors slammed shut on their own, footsteps echoed in empty hallways, and ghostly apparitions appeared throughout the house. The family realized they had to find a way to end the hauntings for good. "We need to perform a ritual," Sarah said, showing them a passage from the diary. "It's the only way to banish the spirits." Tom gathered the necessary items: candles, salt, and a ceremonial dagger. "Let's do this. We have no other choice." They set up the ritual in the basement, forming a circle with the salt and placing the mirror in the center. The family began the ritual, chanting the incantations from the diary. As they did, the temperature in the room dropped, and the ghostly figures from the mirror began to emerge, swirling around them. "Keep going," Sarah urged, her voice shaking. Tom held the dagger steady, ready for the final part of the ritual. "We're almost there." Lily, clutching her mother's hand, watched in terror as the spirits drew closer, their faces contorted with rage and sorrow. As Tom raised the dagger to complete the ritual, a powerful force knocked him to the ground. The mirror glowed brighter, and a deafening roar filled the room. "No, we can't stop now!" Sarah shouted, helping Tom up. With renewed determination, Tom plunged the dagger into the mirror. The glass shattered, releasing a blinding light and a wave of cold air that knocked them all back. The spirits screamed and dissipated, leaving the room in silence. The temperature began to rise, and the oppressive feeling lifted. "It's over," Tom said, breathing heavily. The next morning, the manor felt different. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and the oppressive atmosphere was gone. The family began packing their things, eager to leave the haunted house behind. "We did it," Lily said, smiling for the first time in days. Sarah nodded. "Let's never speak of this place again." Tom agreed. "We need to move on with our lives." As they drove away from Eldridge Manor, the weight of the past days lifted, and they felt hopeful for the future. Back home, life seemed to return to normal. However, one night, Sarah found a piece of the shattered mirror in her bag. She stared at it, her heart pounding. Suddenly, she heard a familiar whisper and saw a shadow move across the room. "Tom, it's not over," she whispered, feeling a chill run down her spine. As the shadow loomed larger, the whisper grew louder, and Sarah realized with horror that the spirits had followed them home.
The old house stood at the end of the lonely street, its windows shattered and its wooden walls weathered by time. Sarah had heard stories about the house since she was a child. It was said to be haunted, a place where shadows whispered secrets and the air was thick with dread. Determined to prove it was all just a myth, she decided to spend the night there. As Sarah pushed open the creaking door, the musty smell of decay hit her. The interior was dark, with only the faintest light filtering through the grimy windows. She stepped inside, the floorboards groaning under her weight. Every corner seemed to be alive with whispers, just out of reach. Sarah moved cautiously into the living room. The furniture was covered in dust and cobwebs draped from the ceiling. An old grandfather clock stood against the wall, its hands frozen at midnight. As she looked around, she heard a faint whispering, like someone speaking from the shadows. On the wall hung a portrait of a stern-looking man. His eyes seemed to follow Sarah as she moved. She felt a chill run down her spine. The whispers grew louder, and for a moment she thought she saw the man's eyes blink. She stepped back in fear, her heart racing. Sarah found herself drawn to a door partially hidden behind a tattered curtain. She hesitated before pulling it open, revealing a set of stairs leading down into the darkness. The whispers were clearer now, urging her to descend. With trembling hands, she held her flashlight and began her descent. The basement was cold and damp, the walls lined with old shelves holding dusty jars and forgotten relics. The whispers were louder here, almost tangible. Sarah felt a presence behind her and spun around but saw nothing. Suddenly, an old radio crackled to life, playing a haunting lullaby. Sarah's flashlight flickered and died. In the darkness, she felt something brush against her arm. She backed away, stumbling over an old trunk. The whispers were deafening now. She managed to open the trunk, revealing an old diary. The pages told the story of a man who had lost his family and descended into madness, cursing the house and anyone who entered. Realizing the danger, Sarah grabbed the diary and rushed up the stairs. The house seemed to come alive, the whispers turning into screams. Doors slammed shut around her, and the air grew colder. She reached the front door and burst out into the night, the whispers fading behind her. Outside, Sarah collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. She looked back at the house, now silent and still. She knew she could never explain what happened, but she had the diary as proof. As she walked away, she heard one last whisper in the wind, promising that the shadows would always be watching.
Evelyn, Mark, Lisa, and John arrived at Crescent Grove, a forgotten village nestled deep in the forest. The sun was setting, casting eerie shadows on the abandoned buildings. The village was said to be haunted, and the four friends had come to investigate the rumors. "This place gives me the creeps," Lisa whispered, clutching Mark's arm. "Don't worry, it's just for one night," Mark reassured her. Evelyn led the group, her curiosity piqued by the mystery. "Let's find a place to set up camp." John the skeptic laughed. "Ghosts aren't real, you'll see." They found an old inn at the center of the village and decided to make it their base for the night. The building was dusty and filled with cobwebs. As they set up their sleeping bags in the main hall, strange noises echoed through the empty corridors. "Did you hear that?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling. "It's just the wind," John replied, though he didn't sound convinced. Evelyn found an old diary on a shelf. "This might tell us what happened here," she said, opening it. As Evelyn read from the diary, the friends learned about the village's dark past. The villagers had practiced forbidden rituals, summoning a malevolent spirit that eventually destroyed them. "This is creepy," Mark said, glancing around nervously. "We should leave," Lisa urged, fear in her eyes. "We need to stay and finish this," Evelyn insisted. "We have to find out if the spirit is still here." Suddenly the air grew cold and the lights flickered. A shadowy figure appeared at the end of the hall, its eyes glowing with a sinister red light. The friends froze in terror. "Run!" Mark shouted, but the figure moved faster, blocking their exit. Evelyn held up the diary like a shield. "We need to use the ritual described here to banish it." The spirit lashed out, knocking John to the ground. Lisa screamed and Mark pulled her back, trying to protect her. With trembling hands, Evelyn and Mark gathered the materials needed for the ritual described in the diary. Lisa and John tried to hold the spirit at bay, their fear palpable. "Hurry up!" Lisa cried as the spirit advanced. "We're almost ready," Evelyn said, her voice shaking. "Mark, light the candles." Mark lit the candles, forming a protective circle. Evelyn began to chant the incantation from the diary, her voice growing stronger with each word. The spirit roared in fury, trying to break through the protective circle. Evelyn continued to chant, her voice now steady and commanding. The air crackled with energy as the spirit's form began to waver. "Keep going," Mark urged, holding Lisa close. John, recovering from the spirit's attack, joined in the chant. The spirit let out a deafening scream as it was forced back. With one final word, Evelyn completed the ritual. The spirit dissolved into the air, leaving a deafening silence behind. The friends collapsed to the floor, exhausted but relieved. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a peaceful silence. "We did it," Evelyn said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let's get out of here," Lisa urged, her eyes still wide with fear. They gathered their things and left the inn, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. As they walked away from Crescent Grove, they felt a sense of triumph and relief. "Let's never do this again," John said, managing a weak smile. As they walked away from the village, the sun rose higher, casting a warm glow over the forest. The village behind them was now just a distant memory, a place they would never forget but never return to. "Let's make a pact," Evelyn said, stopping to look at her friends. "We never speak of this again." "Agreed," Mark, Lisa, and John said in unison. They walked on, the past behind them and the future ahead, grateful to have survived the haunting of Crescent Grove.
Lucy and her husband, Mark, move into an old Victorian-style house they bought at a bargain price. The house is large and filled with antique furniture. As they unpack, Lucy finds a covered portrait in the attic. She pulls off the cloth, revealing a beautiful woman with haunting eyes. She decides to hang it in the living room. That night, Lucy wakes up to strange noises, soft whispers and the sound of footsteps. She dismisses it as the house settling. When she looks at the portrait, the eyes seem to follow her. She feels a chill but convinces herself it's just her imagination. The next day, Lucy hears whispers coming from the living room. She finds Mark staring at the portrait, mesmerized. When she touches his shoulder, he snaps out of it, claiming he heard the woman in the portrait whispering his name. Lucy starts to feel uneasy about the painting. Determined to understand the painting's origins, Lucy visits the local library. She discovers that the woman in the portrait is Isabella, a former owner of the house who disappeared under mysterious circumstances. It's rumored that her spirit haunts the house. That night, the whispers grow louder, and Lucy sees a shadowy figure moving through the house. The air grows cold, and the portrait seems to come alive, the woman's expression changing to one of anger. Lucy feels a strong, malevolent presence. Lucy and Mark contact a paranormal investigator. The investigator explains that Isabella's spirit is trapped and angry. He suggests they find something that belonged to Isabella and use it to perform a ritual to release her spirit. Lucy searches the attic and finds an old diary belonging to Isabella. The diary details her life and the love she lost. It also mentions a locket that she cherished. Lucy finds the locket hidden in a secret compartment in the attic. Lucy and Mark, guided by the paranormal investigator, perform the ritual using the locket. As they chant, the house shakes, and Isabella's ghostly figure appears. She looks sad, but grateful. She reaches out, touches the locket, and then fades away. The air becomes warm and peaceful. With Isabella's spirit at rest, the house feels lighter and more welcoming. The whispers and footsteps stop. Lucy and Mark decide to stay and cherish the history of the house. They hang the locket in a special place to remember Isabella. Months later, Lucy and Mark enjoy their peaceful home. They often think about Isabella and the extraordinary events that brought them closer together. The house is no longer haunted, but the memories of the past live on in a peaceful way. The sun was setting as Emily, a young journalist, arrived at Ravenswood Manor. She had heard rumors of the haunted mansion and wanted to investigate for her next big story. The old, decaying building stood at the edge of the town, surrounded by overgrown trees. As she approached the iron gates, a sense of dread washed over her. Emily pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly. Inside, the mansion was dark and cold. Dust covered the floor and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. She turned on her flashlight, revealing a grand but neglected interior. Her footsteps echoed ominously as she walked down the main hallway. In the dim light, Emily noticed portraits lining the walls. The eyes in the paintings seemed to follow her every move, making her uneasy. Suddenly, she heard a faint whisper, like someone calling her name. She turned around quickly, but there was no one there. Her heart began to race. Emily entered the music room, where an old piano stood covered in dust. As she approached, she heard a soft, haunting melody. The keys were moving on their own, playing a melancholic tune. The room grew colder, and Emily felt an unseen presence watching her. In the library, Emily found a hidden door behind a bookcase. Inside, she discovered a small room filled with strange artifacts and an old leather-bound journal. She opened the journal and read about dark rituals and a curse placed on the mansion. The final entry warned of a vengeful spirit trapped within the house. As Emily read the journal, the temperature dropped sharply. She heard footsteps approaching and saw a shadowy figure materialize in the doorway. The figure was a ghostly woman with a twisted expression of rage. She pointed at Emily, her voice echoing with anger. "You must leave this place!" Emily's survival instincts kicked in, and she bolted from the hidden room. She raced through the dark hallways, the spirit's angry screams echoing behind her. She reached the front door and flung it open, escaping into the night. Gasping for breath, she looked back to see the mansion standing silent and still, but she knew she had been lucky to escape with her life. Safe at home, Emily reviewed her notes and the footage she had captured. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. She wrote her article, revealing the mansion's dark history and the vengeful spirit. As she finished, she felt a cold breeze and heard a whisper, "Thank you." She knew the spirits had found some peace.
Emma, a writer in her early 30s, moves into an old Victorian house in Willow Creek. She hopes the secluded house will help her overcome her writer's block. As she steps into the house, the air feels heavy, and she hears faint whispers echoing through the empty rooms. On her first night, Emma struggles to sleep. The house creaks and groans as if it's alive. She hears footsteps in the hallway, but when she checks, there's no one there. Her unease grows, but she convinces herself it's just the house settling. While exploring the attic, Emma finds an old diary belonging to a girl named Lily. The diary speaks of strange occurrences and a tragic story of how Lily disappeared without a trace. Emma feels a chill run down her spine as she reads the last unfinished entry. The following night, the whispers return, clearer and more urgent. Shadows flicker and move on their own. Emma sees a ghostly figure of a young girl in the hallway, who vanishes as soon as she approaches. Fear takes hold of her. Terrified, Emma reaches out to the town's historian, Mr. Thompson. He tells her about the legend of Lily, a girl who disappeared many years ago. The house has a history of hauntings, and no one has lived there for long. Emma realizes she must uncover the truth to find peace. Determined, Emma performs a seance to communicate with Lily's spirit. As she calls out, the room grows cold, and the ghostly figure of Lily appears. Lily reveals she was murdered, and begs for Emma's help to find her remains and put her to rest. Following Lily's clues, Emma discovers a hidden cellar beneath the house. There, she finds Lily's remains and a locket with her name. Emma feels a mix of horror and relief, knowing she can finally help Lily find peace. Emma arranges a proper burial for Lily. As she places the locket in Lily's grave, a sense of calm envelops the area. The whispers cease, and the house feels lighter. Emma feels a deep sense of closure and knows she has done the right thing. With the haunting over, Emma finishes her novel, inspired by Lily's story. The house no longer feels oppressive. Instead, it's filled with a comforting, serene atmosphere. Emma sits by the window looking out at the sunny landscape, ready to start a new chapter in her life. Julia and her husband, Mark, move into an old Victorian house in a small town. The house is beautiful, but has been vacant for years. As they unpack, Julia finds an old dusty mirror in the attic. She decides to clean it and hang it in their bedroom. That night, Julia wakes up to strange sounds, whispering and soft footsteps. She dismisses it as the house settling. However, when she looks into the mirror, she briefly sees a shadowy figure behind her before it vanishes. Disturbed by the experience, Julia visits the local library to research the house's history. She learns that a woman named Elizabeth lived there a century ago and mysteriously disappeared. Locals believe her spirit haunts the house. Julia becomes convinced that the mirror is connected to Elizabeth. That night, she sees Elizabeth's ghost in the mirror again. This time, the ghost seems to be trying to communicate, mouthing the words, "Help me." Julia tells Mark about her experiences. Skeptical but wanting to support her, Mark suggests they consult a paranormal expert. The expert tells them that Elizabeth's spirit is trapped and needs help to find peace. The expert instructs them to perform a ritual to release Elizabeth's spirit. They set up candles and the mirror in the living room. Julia reads a passage provided by the expert. The room grows cold, and Elizabeth's spirit appears. Elizabeth's spirit reveals that she was murdered by her jealous husband and her body hidden in the basement. Julia and Mark are horrified but determined to give Elizabeth justice. They find her remains in the basement, just as she described. They call the police, who properly lay Elizabeth's remains to rest. Afterward, the house feels lighter and the strange occurrences stop. Julia looks at the mirror one last time and sees Elizabeth smiling peacefully before fading away. Months later, Julia and Mark have settled into their now peaceful home. They keep the mirror as a reminder of Elizabeth and the mystery they solved together. Life returns to normal, but they never forget the ghostly presence that once haunted their home.
In the heart of Hollow Creek, an abandoned house sits atop a hill, its windows shattered and its doors hanging off their hinges. The locals whisper tales of a family who disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only the echoes of their screams. But when a group of teenagers decides to spend the night in the house, they quickly realize that the rumors were just the beginning of the horrors that await them. As the group of teenagers gathers outside the house, they dare each other to spend the night inside, eager to prove their bravery. With nervous laughter and shaky hands, they push open the creaking door and step inside, their hearts pounding in their chests. Little do they know they're about to come face to face with the horrors that lie within. As the teenagers explore the house, they feel an oppressive presence weighing down on them, a sense of malevolence that seems to seep from the very walls. They hear whispers in the darkness and catch fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures out of the corners of their eyes. Fear grips them tight as they realize they're not alone in the house. As the night wears on, the teenagers uncover clues about the house's dark past. A family torn apart by tragedy, their spirits trapped within the walls for eternity. They find old photographs and newspaper clippings, piecing together the story of the family's demise. But as they delve deeper, they awaken something sinister that has been lying dormant for years. As the night progresses, the house comes alive with paranormal activity. Doors slam shut on their own, objects move of their own accord, and ghostly apparitions appear in the darkness. The teenagers huddle together, their screams echoing through the empty halls as they realize they're trapped in a nightmare from which there's no escape. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the teenagers make a final stand against the evil that haunts the house. Armed with makeshift weapons and fierce determination, they confront the ghostly apparitions that roam the halls. knowing that their survival depends on their ability to banish the darkness that lurks within. As dawn breaks, the paranormal activity subsides, and the house falls silent once more. The teenagers emerge from that darkness, battered and bruised but alive. They exchange weary smiles, knowing that they've faced their fears and emerged stronger for it. Though the scars of their ordeal will never fully heal, they take solace in the knowledge that they've conquered the darkness that once threatened to consume them. Asterisk. It was a dark and stormy night. Sarah and her friends, Mike and Lucy, decided to take a shortcut through the old haunted woods to get home faster. They had heard the stories about the woods, but they didn't believe in ghosts. Asterisk, asterisk. As they entered the woods, the wind howled through the trees, and shadows danced in the dim light of their flashlights. The path was narrow and overgrown, making it difficult to walk. Suddenly, they heard a strange noise coming from the darkness. It sounded like whispering, but they couldn't understand the words. Sarah suggested they keep moving, but Mike wanted to check it out. They came across an old abandoned cabin. The windows were broken, and the door hung loosely on its hinges. Lucy felt a chill run down her spine as they approached it. Inside the cabin, the air was cold and damp. Cobwebs covered the corners, and the floor creaked with every step. They found old furniture and strange symbols carved into the walls. Just as they were about to leave, a ghostly apparition appeared in front of them. It was a woman dressed in old-fashioned clothes with a sorrowful expression. She whispered, "Leave this place." Just as they were about to leave, a ghostly apparition appeared in front of them. It was a woman dressed in old-fashioned clothes with a sorrowful expression. She whispered, "Leave this place." Terrified, they ran out of the cabin and back into the woods. The ghostly woman seemed to follow them, her whispers growing louder and more desperate. They could feel her cold presence right behind them. In their panic, they lost the path and found themselves deeper in the woods. The trees seemed to close in on them, and the whispers of the ghostly woman echoed around them. Just when they thought they were lost forever, they saw a faint light in the distance. They followed it and found themselves at the edge of the woods, the ghostly whispers fading away. They finally made it out of the woods, panting and scared, but safe. They vowed never to take that shortcut again and hurried home, the haunting experience etched in their memories forever. On a foggy night, 4 friends, Jack, Mia, Ethan, and Sophie, arrived at Blackwood Manor. The old abandoned mansion was said to be cursed. They had come to investigate the legend. They pushed it open the heavy front door, which creaked loudly. Inside, the air was cold and stale. Dust covered every surface and cobwebs hung in the corners. The living room was filled with old furniture covered in white sheets. An antique chandelier hung from the ceiling, and a grand piano stood in the corner. Suddenly, the piano played a single, eerie note, causing everyone to jump. They moved to the library, where shelves of dusty books lined the walls. Jack picked up an old book, and as he opened it, a cold breeze swept through the room, making the candles flicker. They entered a long hallway filled with old portraits. The eyes of the portraits seemed to follow them as they walked. Mia shivered, feeling a chill run down her spine. At the end of the hallway, they found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to go down. The wooden stairs creaked under their weight, and the air grew colder with each step. The basement was cold and damp. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls. In the corner, they saw a ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. She reached out to them, and they felt an icy chill. Terrified, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return. Back at their homes, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and decided never to speak of it again.
Emma and Ryan, a young couple seeking adventure, venture into the dense woods surrounding their town. The trees loom tall, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. A sense of foreboding fills the air as they tread deeper into the unknown. As dusk falls, Emma and Ryan realize they've lost their way. Panic sets in as the shadows lengthen, obscuring the path ahead. Strange sounds echo through the trees, a rustling of leaves, the distant cry of an unknown creature. They quicken their pace, desperate to find their way back. In their search for shelter, Emma and Ryan stumble upon an old, dilapidated cabin hidden deep within the woods. The structure stands ominously, its windows shattered and doors creaking in the wind. Despite their reservations, they have no choice but to seek refuge within its decaying walls. As night falls, Emma and Ryan huddle together inside the cabin, seeking solace in the flickering light of a single lantern. But the darkness outside seems to seep in through the cracks, accompanied by soft whispers that echo through the stillness. They exchange nervous glances, their fear mounting with each passing moment. As they search the cabin for signs of life, Emma and Ryan stumble upon an old photograph hidden beneath a dusty pile of books. The image depicts a family, a mother, father, and child, smiling happily. But there's something unsettling about their eyes, as if they hold a secret that refuses to be forgotten. As Emma and Ryan try to make sense of the photograph, they're startled by a sudden noise, a scraping sound coming from the attic above. Heart pounding, they cautiously ascend the creaky staircase, their nerves on edge. But what they find waiting for them is beyond their worst nightmares. In the attic, Emma and Ryan come face to face with a malevolent presence, an ethereal figure shrouded in darkness. Its eyes burn with an otherworldly intensity as it reaches out to them, its whispers growing louder with each passing moment. Emma and Ryan know they must confront the entity if they hope to escape the woods alive. With every ounce of courage they possess, Emma and Ryan confront the entity, channeling their fear into strength. As they do, the darkness begins to recede, replaced by a blinding light that fills the attic. With one final push, they break free from its grasp and flee into the night, leaving the haunted cabin behind them. As dawn breaks over the horizon, Emma and Ryan emerge from the woods, battered but alive. They exchange a weary smile, grateful to have survived the horrors of the Whispering Woods. Though they may never forget the darkness that lurks within, they know that they've emerged stronger for having faced it together. Ravenwood Manor had always been shrouded in mystery and fear. On a cold, misty evening, Alex, a young journalist with a thirst for the unknown, arrived at the manor. The gates were rusty and covered in ivy, and as Alex pushed them open, they creaked ominously. The mansion loomed in the distance, its dark windows staring back like lifeless eyes. Alex pushed open the heavy wooden door, which groaned in protest. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. He turned on his flashlight, revealing a grand but dilapidated foyer. Dust-covered chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and old furniture lay draped in white sheets. His footsteps echoed in the vast, empty space as he ventured deeper inside. As Alex explored the mansion, he felt a sudden chill. Turning around, he saw a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. The figure vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving his heart racing. Determined to find answers, he made his way to the library, hoping to uncover the mansion's dark past. In the library, Alex found rows of dusty old books. As he searched through them, he heard faint whispers and the sound of pages turning on their own. He discovered an old journal belonging to the mansion's original owner, Lord Ravenwood. The entries spoke of dark rituals and a curse that had been placed on the house and its inhabitants. Alex's exploration led him to a room filled with mirrors. As he walked through, his reflection seemed to move on its own, eyes following him with an unsettling intensity. One mirror in particular caught his attention. In it, he saw the ghostly figure of a woman crying, her eyes pleading for help. Alex reached out to touch the mirror, but the image vanished. Alex discovered a hidden door behind a tattered curtain in the study. He descended the creaky stairs into a dark, musty basement. The room was filled with strange symbols painted on the walls, and old, dusty books scattered on a table. He found a journal detailing the dark rituals and a curse placed on the house by Lord Ravenwood. As Alex read the journal, the basement grew colder. A ghostly figure of Lord Ravenwood appeared, his face twisted with rage. He pointed at Alex and screamed, "You should not have come here!" The walls shook, and the air filled with a chilling wind. Alex knew he had to leave immediately. Alex bolted up the stairs, the spirit's screams echoing behind him. He raced through the mansion, the walls seeming to close in on him. He burst through the front door and into the night, gasping for breath. The house stood silent and still, but he could feel the weight of its curse pressing down on him. Back in his apartment, Alex reviewed the photos and notes he had taken. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. He wrote his article, revealing the dark history of Ravenwood Manor. As he finished, he felt a cold draft and heard Lord Ravenwood's voice whisper, "You cannot escape the curse." Alex knew the haunting was far from over.
In the dying light of evening stands the abandoned mill, a relic of a forgotten era. Its weathered wooden walls bear the scars of time, with broken windows and a sagging roof threatening to collapse. Vines crawl up the sides like tendrils of decay, while the surrounding trees cast long, eerie shadows that seem to reach out and beckon. In front of the mill lies a murky pond, its still waters reflecting the ghostly glow of the moon above. Reeds and cattails line the shore, rustling softly in the breeze. The air is thick with the sound of croaking frogs, their calls echoing through the darkness like a haunting melody. At the side of the mill, the giant wheel creaks and groans as it turns slowly in the moonlight. Moss and algae cling to its wooden surface, evidence of years spent submerged in the stagnant water below. The sound of rushing water fills the air, a constant reminder of the mill's former glory days. Inside the mill, the air is thick with dust and cobwebs, the silence broken only by the occasional creak of rusty machinery. Shadows dance in the dim light, casting strange shapes upon the walls and adding to the sense of unease that permeates the space. The floorboards creak underfoot as if protesting the intrusion of unwelcome visitors. Descending into the depths of the mill, the air grows colder and the darkness deeper. Rusted pipes line the narrow corridors, their surfaces slick with condensation. Crumbling walls threaten to collapse at any moment, while the sound of dripping water echoes through the darkness like a mournful lament. In the dusty confines of the mill's attic, old crates and forgotten tools litter the floor, their surfaces coated in a thick layer of dust. Cobwebs hang from the rafters like ghostly curtains, their delicate threads shimmering in the faint glow of moonlight that filters through a cracked window. The air is heavy with the weight of forgotten memories, a testament to the mill's long-abandoned past. In the dead of night, the mill exterior takes on a sinister appearance, its weathered walls looming like silent sentinels against the backdrop of the moonlit sky. Eerie shadows dance across its surface, twisting and contorting in the shifting light. The surrounding forest seems to close in, suffocating the structure with its oppressive darkness, as if eager to swallow it whole. Behind the mill lies a forgotten graveyard, its tombstones crumbling and overgrown with weeds. Wisps of mist cling to the ground, swirling around the dilapidated graves like restless spirits seeking release. The air is heavy with the scent of decay, a grim reminder of the inevitability of death in the passage of time. A rickety bridge spans a chasm behind the mill, its wooden planks warped and rotted with age. The rushing waters below churn angrily, their frothy white caps illuminated by the pale light of the moon above. The sound of rushing water fills the night air, a constant reminder of the relentless passage of time and the inevitability of change. As dawn breaks, the first rays of sunlight pierce through the darkness, casting a warm glow upon the mill and the surrounding landscape. The forest awakens with the sounds of birdsong, filling the air with a symphony of life and renewal. Despite its dark past, a sense of peace settles over the mill, as if nature itself has forgiven its sins and granted it a second chance at redemption.
The abandoned Ravenswood Asylum stood on a hill, shrouded in fog and mystery. Jessica, a paranormal investigator, arrived at dusk, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. She parked her car and gazed at the looming building, its windows dark and empty like soulless eyes. Jessica pushed open the heavy front door, which groaned loudly. Inside, the asylum was dark and cold. She turned on her flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness. The walls were lined with peeling paint and graffiti, and the floor was littered with debris. Her footsteps echoed eerily as she ventured deeper. As Jessica explored the main hallway, she felt a sudden chill. She turned to see a ghostly figure of a nurse standing at the end of the corridor. The nurse's face was pale and expressionless, and she slowly raised a finger to her lips as if to shush Jessica. Then she vanished into thin air. Jessica entered a room that appeared to have been a common area. Old, broken furniture was scattered around, and the walls were covered with faded, eerie drawings. As she examined the drawings, she heard faint whispers. She turned to see shadowy figures moving along the walls, their eyes glowing faintly. In the corner of the room, Jessica found an old journal. She opened it and read about the asylum's dark history, experiments on patients, mysterious deaths, and cover-ups. The journal mentioned a hidden basement where the worst atrocities occurred. Determined, Jessica set out to find it. Jessica found a hidden door behind a bookshelf, leading to a staircase that descended into darkness. She took a deep breath and started down the steps. The basement was cold and damp, with rusty equipment and old stained medical tools scattered around. The air was thick with the smell of decay. In the basement, Jessica saw the spirits of the patients. They were trapped, reliving their torment. A particularly sorrowful spirit, a young woman named Alice, revealed that the asylum's director had performed cruel experiments on them. The spirits begged Jessica to help them find peace. Jessica found a hidden chamber where the director's spirit lingered, still obsessed with his experiments. She confronted him, demanding he release the tortured souls. The director's spirit raged, but the power of the trapped souls combined with Jessica's determination forced him to vanish into the ether. With the director's spirit gone, the asylum began to crumble. Jessica hurried out, watching from a safe distance as the building collapsed. The spirits were finally free, and a sense of peace settled over the area. As the sun rose, the fog lifted, revealing a bright new day.
On a cold, misty evening, four friends, Alice, Mark, Sarah, and James, stand before Blackwood House, an old mansion with a dark history. Mark, the brave one, dares everyone to spend the night inside. Despite their fear, they accept the challenge, eager to prove their courage. The iron gate creaks as they push it open and step onto the overgrown path. The front door groans loudly as they push it open, revealing a dark and dusty foyer. Cobwebs hang from the ceiling and the air smells of mold. They switch on their flashlights, revealing old furniture covered in white sheets. As they step inside, the door slams shut behind them, making them jump. They move into the living room, where a grand piano sits covered in dust. The wallpaper is peeling, and antique furniture is draped with sheets. Alice notices a photo on the mantelpiece, a family portrait with the eyes scratched out. She feels a chill and steps back, bumping into Sarah. A soft whisper echoes through the room, sending shivers down their spines. "Did you hear that?" James asks, his voice trembling. They listen intently, but the whispering stops. Mark tries to laugh it off, but the fear in his eyes betrays him. They decide to explore further. In the kitchen, they find rusted appliances and broken dishes scattered on the floor. The air is colder here. Sarah opens a cupboard, and a pair of glowing red eyes stare back at her. She screams, and the eyes disappear. The cupboard door slams shut on its own, and they all back away, terrified. They find a door leading to the basement. James suggests going down, but Alice hesitates. The others convince her, and they slowly descend the creaky wooden stairs. The basement is pitch dark and damp. Their flashlights reveal old, dusty furniture and strange symbols on the walls. In the basement, they find an old table with a Ouija board. Suddenly, the planchette moves on its own, spelling out, "Get out." A low growl echoes through the room, and they see a shadowy figure with glowing red eyes. Panicked, they rush back up the stairs, tripping over each other in their haste. Desperate to leave, they race towards the front door. The house seems to come alive, with doors slamming and ghostly wails echoing through the halls. They struggle to open the front door, finally breaking it open and escaping into the night. The house falls silent behind them. Outside, they collapse onto the grass, gasping for breath. The mansion looms dark and silent behind them. They vow never to return, each one haunted by the night's events. The night is cold, but they feel a sense of relief and safety as they walk away. Back at their homes, they try to return to normal life. But each night, they are haunted by nightmares of the glowing red eyes and the whispers in the dark. The memory of that night stays with them, a constant reminder of the terror they faced.
Emma arrived at Hollow Hill, an old mansion inherited from a distant relative she never knew. Surrounded by a dense forest, the mansion looked abandoned and sinister. The sky was overcast, and a sense of unease washed over her as she approached the entrance. Emma pushed open the heavy wooden door, which groaned loudly. Inside, the mansion was dark and musty. Dust covered every surface and cobwebs hung in the corners. An eerie silence filled the air, broken only by the distant sound of creaking floorboards. Emma stepped into the living room, where old furniture lay shrouded in white sheets. An old fireplace dominated one wall, with a large mirror above it. She saw a faint movement in the mirror, but when she turned around, the room was empty. The only sound was the faint ticking of an old clock. In the hallway, Emma found portraits of her ancestors. The eyes of the painted figures seemed to follow her. She felt a chill as she passed by a particularly stern-looking man. Suddenly, she heard a whisper, but when she turned around, no one was there. Emma discovered the mansion's library, filled with ancient books and old furniture. She found an old leather-bound journal on a desk. As she opened it, she read about dark rituals and mysterious deaths that plagued her family. The air grew colder, and she felt an unseen presence watching her. Emma noticed a hidden door behind a bookshelf. She hesitated, but pushed it open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down. The air was damp and cold. Holding her flashlight, she descended the stairs, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the silence. The basement was cold and damp, with strange symbols painted on the walls. An altar stood in the center, surrounded by melted candles and old, tattered books. As Emma approached the altar, she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The symbols seemed to glow faintly, and she heard distant, echoing whispers. Emma's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. The whispers grew louder, and she felt a cold hand brush against her arm. Panic set in as she fumbled to turn the flashlight back on. When it flickered back on, she saw a ghostly figure standing by the altar, staring at her with hollow eyes. Desperate to escape, Emma turned and ran up the stairs. The house seemed to come alive, with doors slamming and shadows moving around her. She reached the front door, threw it open, and ran into the stormy night, her heart pounding. She didn't stop until she reached her car. Breathing heavily, Emma glanced back at the mansion as she reached her car. In an upstairs window, she saw the ghostly figure watching her. The whispers faded, but the memory of that night would haunt her forever. She drove away, vowing never to return. In a small town nestled among the hills, an old abandoned mill stood tall, its dark silhouette looming against the twilight sky. For years, the townsfolk had whispered tales of strange occurrences within its decaying walls. Tonight, a group of curious teenagers dared each other to explore its depths, unaware of the horrors that awaited them. Among the group was Sarah, a brave soul who accepted the dare without hesitation. Her friends, Alex, Jake, and Emily, exchanged nervous glances but followed her lead. Armed with only flashlights and nervous laughter, they ventured into the mill, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the floorboards creaked beneath their feet. Shadows danced on the walls, and strange symbols adorned the crumbling brickwork. The group pressed on, drawn deeper into the labyrinthine corridors by an unseen force. As they explored, they began to hear whispers, a faint, ghostly sound that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. Sarah's heart raced as she urged her friends to keep moving, but the whispers grew louder, echoing through the halls like a sinister chorus. Suddenly, a figure materialized before them, a ghostly apparition with hollow eyes and a tattered gown. Sarah gasped, frozen in terror as the ghost reached out with spectral hands. With a scream, she bolted, her friends close behind, but the ghost pursued them with relentless determination. They raced through the corridors, their hearts pounding in their chests as the ghost closed in. Sarah could feel its icy breath on her neck, its chilling touch sending shivers down her spine. With every turn, they prayed for an exit, but the mill seemed to stretch on endlessly, trapping them in its clutches. Just when all hope seemed lost, they stumbled upon a door, a faint glimmer of moonlight shining through the cracks. With a burst of adrenaline, they pushed through, stumbling out into the night air. Behind them, the mill collapsed in a cloud of dust, the ghost's haunting cries fading into the distance. As they collapsed in exhaustion, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the ghost still lingered, watching them from the shadows. She vowed never to return to the mill, but she knew its haunting presence would stay with her forever, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurked in the darkness.
In the heart of a dense forest stood an old, forgotten asylum. It had been abandoned for decades, its history buried under layers of dust and overgrown vines. The locals believed it was cursed, and no one dared to go near it. However, a group of 4 friends, Jake, Lisa, Ben, and Sarah, decided to explore it after hearing the eerie tales. Are we really doing this, Injato Selwyn? Lisa asked, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. Of course, Jake replied, leading the way. It's just an old building. As they approached the asylum, the air grew colder, and an unsettling silence surrounded them. Inside, the asylum was even more ominous. The walls were lined with peeling paint, and the floor was covered in debris. The air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. This place gives me the creeps, Ben said, his flashlight illuminating the dark corridors. Just stick together, Jake said, trying to sound brave. We'll be fine. As they moved deeper into the asylum, they heard faint whispers and distant footsteps, though they were the only ones there. Or so they thought. While exploring a particularly dark hallway, Lisa suddenly screamed. Did you see that? She pointed towards a shadowy figure that disappeared around the corner. What did you see? Jake asked, rushing to her side. A person, or something that looked like one, Lisa replied, shaking. Let's check it out, Ben suggested, though his voice was shaky. They cautiously followed, but the figure was gone. Instead, they found an old, rusted wheelchair with fresh scratch marks on the floor. In one of the rooms, they found old patient records and disturbing photos. The files detailed horrific experiments conducted on the patients. This is sick, Sarah said, flipping through the documents. No wonder this place is abandoned. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them. The friends rushed to open it, but it was stuck. The room grew colder, and they heard a low, guttural growl. We need to get out of here, Jake said, panic setting in. They managed to pry the door open and fled down the corridor. The whispers grew louder, and they could feel a presence following them. Sarah looked back and saw shadowy figures closing in. Run! She screamed. They raced through the maze-like hallways, trying to find an exit. The spirits of the asylum's past residents seemed to be everywhere, their wails echoing through the walls. We're not alone, Ben panted, fear evident in his voice. The group stumbled upon a chapel within the asylum, its stained glass windows cracked but still intact. The room had an eerie calmness, and the spirits seemed to avoid it. Maybe we can hide here, Lisa suggested, her voice trembling. They barricaded the doors and huddled together, trying to catch their breath. As they sat in the dim light of their flashlights, they noticed a hidden door behind the altar. Should we check it out? Jake asked. We don't have a choice, Ben replied. They opened the hidden door and found a narrow staircase leading down to a secret basement. The air grew colder as they descended. The basement was filled with old medical equipment and cages. This must be where they conducted their experiments, Sarah whispered. As they explored, they found a large, iron-bound book, filled with incantations and rituals. The book seemed to pulse with a dark energy. We need to destroy this, Jake said. It might be the source of the curse. With the book in hand, they returned to the chapel. They decided to perform a ritual to break the curse. As they began chanting from the book, the spirits became more aggressive, banging on the doors and windows. Keep going, Alex shouted. The room shook, and the spirits' wails grew louder. Just as it seemed the spirits would break through, a blinding light filled the chapel, and the spirits screamed one final time before vanishing. It's over, Emily whispered, dropping the book. The spirits gone, the friends made their way out of the asylum. The building seemed less menacing now, the air lighter. We made it, Lisa said, relief evident in her voice. As they reached the forest edge, they turned back to see the asylum one last time. It stood silently, as if the horrors within had finally been laid to rest. We should go, Ben said, and never speak of this place again. Back in town, life slowly returned to normal. The friends promised each other to never speak of the asylum again. However, the memories of that night lingered. A few weeks later, Sarah received a package. Inside was another iron-bound book, similar to the one they had destroyed. Attached was a note, for your collection. Her heart raced as she realized the curse might not be broken after all. In a tranquil forest clearing, the dying light of day cast long shadows over the lush greenery. At the center of the clearing looms a rustic cabin, its weathered facade hinting at secrets hidden within. Inside the cabin, the living room is shrouded in darkness, illuminated only by the feeble glow of a single lamp. Faded wallpaper peels from the walls, and worn-out furniture sits silent and still. Dust dances in the air, stirred by an unseen presence that lingers in the shadows. Outside, the forest clearing is bathed in the ethereal glow of moonlight, casting a haunting pall over the landscape. Ominous clouds gather overhead, and the trees sway in the wind, their branches casting eerie shadows that seem to dance in the darkness. In the kitchen, neglect hangs heavy in the air, with peeling paint and cobwebs clinging to every surface. Moonlight filters through grimy windows, casting twisted shadows that seem to writhe and twist upon the dusty countertops and rusted appliances. Along a winding forest path, darkness reigns supreme, with gnarled trees looming overhead like silent sentinels. The path disappears into the blackness, its destination unknown and foreboding, daring any who venture forth to tread carefully. In the bedroom, the air is musty and thick with the scent of decay. A creaky bed sits silent and still, its threadbare curtains fluttering in the breeze. Moonlight filters through cracks in the walls, casting eerie patterns that dance upon the worn floorboards like specters in the night. As night falls, a raging storm descends upon the forest clearing, with lightning illuminating the sky in blinding flashes and thunder rumbling like the roar of a distant beast. The wind howls through the trees, whipping up leaves and debris in a frenzied dance of chaos and despair. Deep within the bowels of the cabin lies the basement, a dark and foreboding chamber filled with crumbling walls and rusty pipes. Moonlight filters weakly through a small window, casting a feeble glow over the mold-covered floor, illuminating the dank and musty air with its eerie light. As dawn breaks, the forest clearing is bathed in the soft light of a new day, with birds chirping and dew glistening on the leaves like scattered diamonds. The storm has passed, leaving behind a sense of calm and renewal that belies the horrors that lurk within the haunted cabin. In the cabin's living room, morning sunlight streams through the windows, banishing the shadows and illuminating the space with its warm embrace. Dust motes dance lazily in the air, and the oppressive atmosphere of the night has lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and serenity that signals the dawn of a new day. In a secluded forest, shrouded in mist, lies an ancient mansion rumored to be haunted. A group of friends, Emma, Mark, and Sarah, venture into the forest one chilly evening, drawn by the allure of the mansion's dark history. As they approach the mansion, they are greeted by an imposing wrought iron gate, its hinges creaking ominously in the chilly night air. The mansion looms before them, its grandeur faded and its windows like empty eyes staring out into the darkness. Inside the mansion, the air is thick with dust and the sound of creaking floorboards echoes through the empty halls. The friends explore room after room, their footsteps muffled by faded carpets and their voices swallowed by the oppressive silence. As they delve deeper into the mansion, they uncover signs of its dark past. Forgotten rooms filled with cobweb-covered furniture, secret passages hidden behind crumbling walls, and faded portraits of long-dead residents whose eyes seem to follow their every move. As night falls and shadows deepen, the mansion comes alive with strange noises and eerie whispers. The friends feel a presence lurking in the darkness, unseen but unmistakably malevolent, its icy fingers brushing against their skin like the chill of a grave. In a desperate bid to escape the mansion's grasp, the friends race through its labyrinthine halls, their hearts pounding and their breath coming in ragged gasps. But the mansion seems to have other plans, its corridors shifting and changing before their eyes, trapping them in a nightmarish maze from which there may be no escape. Cornered in the mansion's dark heart, the friends confront the malevolent force that has plagued them since their arrival. With a final desperate act of defiance, they banish the entity back into the shadows from whence it came, freeing themselves from its grasp and escaping into the night.